All right, a challenging weekend of college football for teams that are good. So Georgia, let's go straight into it. I understand there's nuance here. I would have kicked the field goal to go up 19-0. Comments? Who else wants to go first?
I would have done the same thing. I mean, it's the same thing as Kirby and tried to push it in. I thought that was the right call. They just didn't execute. They've got to get better at that, Ryan.
I would have just taken the points with the way the game was going, and you basically put it away with that field goal right there. Will Levis and the crew drove right down the field and scored on the very next drive, and that wouldn't feel as bad if you had the extra 3 points there. Kirby very strongly felt he made the right decision. He said he made that decision 15 years ago, Dean.
The devil's advocate to what I was saying is multiple things have to go right for Kentucky. They need to score 2 touchdowns, convert 2 2-point conversions. They scored a touchdown. They did not get the 2-point conversion. At that point, for me, the game was over. I will add, because you are pretty adamant that I explain this, on the field was as challenging an environment when you're functioning with your hands that I've seen. Last week was bad. This was way worse. And I guess the natural comparison might have been the Kentucky game in 19, which was bad.
Rough.
So they could not throw the ball. I don't know what they wound up with in terms of throwing numbers, but
Will Levis had some nice passes, but he's a guy who apparently can throw it 75 yards. Kirby said he has a bazooka. A little challenging for Stetson Bennett more than Will Levis today, but Georgia rushed for 250 or just under 250.
That's what this game was, man. You could see that in the first quarter of the game was 30 minutes. I don't think it was even 30 minutes.
They had, I felt like 2 possessions.
Everybody had. Georgia had 3 possessions in the first half, scored all 3.
And they ran down the field, just didn't get in the end zone.
I mean, it's frustrating to see that because if you're up 21-0, people. So I don't know how, online has reacted to this. I'm assuming that they're not real pleased, but everything's about perspective. Where are we at on the calendar? Georgia, basically has locked up a playoff berth. Tennessee is in a knife fight with South Carolina. Michigan escaped. Texas Christian escaped. Ohio State escaped. Georgia didn't escape. They won a game.
The game was never in doubt.
No, not to me. And the big question was, did you kick it to go up 3 scores? And they chose not to, Ryan. Now, from your perspective, we can talk about other stuff unless you want to continue talking about that.
About which part?
I think it's a legitimate question asking, why did you decide to go for it? Because at that point, if they score, whether they score the field goal or they run it in, the game's over.
Yeah.
But they didn't score. That was the problem.
A little concerning that they couldn't punch it in.
That was Kirby's
3 or 4 tries.
That was Kirby's point.
I think Kendall Milton was the one on the last one, and they just couldn't push the pile forward, which is something they've had a lot of success with that this year, pushing it in.
But when you know Georgia can't throw,
they started loading the box a little bit extra
They did.
when that happened, and you can't blame them. That's the way that we knew this game was going to be on the ground a lot, regardless, because of the weather, and it was, and that's why it went so quickly because the clock was just rolling. When Georgia had the ball, the clock was rolling.
We loved
the entire game. We were big fans of that tonight. Big fans of that most of the time, really. But the defense played really well outside of the one drive where you let them get down the field and score. Kirby was really not pleased about that, and he's never going to be pleased about a scoring drive.
A 99-yard drive.
Yeah, and so he used the words bend but don't break again. That's the defense that they played against Oregon was bend but don't break. Oregon got down the field a lot but couldn't capitalize at the end. That's what this reminded me of a little bit because Kentucky did have a couple of scoring opportunities, only took advantage of one of them. Levis made some good plays, made some bad plays. Through the lens of my camera, I lost the ball on the way to Kelee's interception, so I never saw the actual throw. I don't know what that looked like.
So I thought Kelee might have baited him, but you said it was just a bad throw.
Yeah, I was in the Mark Stoops press conference too, and he said that he just tried to throw it into a window there, more of, I think, on a line drive instead of putting more air under it, where Kelee turned around and was able to make a play on it. So just not how you want to throw that particular pass, but I thought Kelee played pretty well. He had a pass interference. I think he did.
Not on the 99-yard drive.
No, I think it was earlier in the game where I think they just went 3 and out, right after that. But Kamari Lassiter played really well. He's a tough, physical tackler on the perimeter. He blew up a couple screens, but Small Mudden was all over the place. They made some 4th down stops.
Yes, they did.
Kentucky's first drive, they went 4 on 4th and 1. They didn't get it. So, I thought the defense played pretty well. Only give up 6 points.
So I thought this game, as soon as we got out there, would be okay, you're just going to have to hold on here because you just can't function. When the Kentucky snapper dribbled the ball to the field goal attempt, that did not surprise me because unless your hands are constantly moving, or it's what time is it right now? 8:30ish. So I stopped shooting at maybe 6:45, and I just did this with my hands, and they're only now. I can still feel the cold.
You got some big old hands, dude.
They're not that big, but you're just trying to stay warm. I thought Georgia. Look. No one's going to rewatch this game because nothing that happened in this game is relevant to the next game. It's not going to be cold. This is the last game that Georgia's going to play outdoor. Next week's the last game they're going to play outdoors. This is the last cold game. 50 degrees is not cold. Kirby's point too, Ryan, was that they've had a real rough stretch here. Gators, Tennessee, at Mississippi State, at Kentucky.
Since the bye
Right.
week, he said it's one of the roughest stretches he's ever seen in this league, and I don't think he's wrong. Since that bye week, that's a lot of traveling. 3 of those 4 games, you're traveling 6 hours plus.
Yeah.
5 hours, 5.5 hours, 6 hours for Jacksonville, whatever you want to call it. But that takes a lot on us. We get it because we're doing it too. That takes a lot out of them. They're flying, but. So it's not as bad.
They almost are in Athens by now.
Oh, probably. They're in the air for sure, right?
That's so annoying.
But you play who was ranked number 1 at the time, Tennessee at home. That's your only home game. The Florida game, big rivalry game. You got to go to Mississippi State. It's cold there. You got the cowbells. There's just a bunch of little stuff going on. That's kind of a weird environment. And then here, it's freezing. It is freezing. With that wind, it is freezing.
It actually legitimately...
It was legitimately freezing by definition.
It wasn't, Ryan, it wasn't
My
cold.
fingers hurt, right now. They hurt.
And you had gloves. I did not. I went without gloves.
Yeah. So the 2 fingertips, because these are like the...
I did not purposely go without gloves.
You did lose them. We did.
I tried very hard. The issue was the wind. It was not the cold. It was the wind.
It was the wind.
You could not...
They couldn't throw the ball.
So the American flag and the Kentucky flag, the whole first half for sure, were just straight. Like that's the wind was doing. Now it was windy on the field, but it wasn't. It was
windy when Stetson threw that deep ball.
Yeah, but he missed. That was just a bad throw.
It was. I think.
Yeah. He said he didn't see the safety
too, but
so that's what I asked.
Bad throw.
That was just a bad
think it was
throw.
A little bit of both, but
Which the Kelee interception? Or the Stetson interception?
The Stetson interception.
Well, I just thought he should have never thrown that ball in the first place.
Right.
He said he didn't see the second safety who was
Right.
coming up over the top. He said he just straight up didn't see him. He used the words daggum. I didn't see the daggum safety. That's exactly what he said. But and he seemed pretty frustrated about that. I thought Stetson seemed frustrated in his press conference more so
really?
than usual. Yeah, I felt frustration. And when you're a quarterback and you can't throw the ball like that in a game, your hands are freezing. He asked you what the temperature was.
It's the hands,
I understand why he's
I'm
frustrated.
telling you.
That's not a game a quarterback wants to have. I didn't think he played poorly.
That one run was really an important run.
Yeah, he had a
That
really
first
important
down.
run. Recognizes that the clock is going to keep rolling because you're not at the 2-minute mark yet in the fourth quarter. It was a very heads-up play by Stetson to save his body, get the first down, everything. That run was really important.
Real quick, props to Kenny McIntosh. I thought he played really, really well.
Career day for him, right? Yardage-wise.
147 rushing yards.
I have no idea.
It was a career day for him yardage-wise.
He was ready to get his interviews over with. He wanted to start. I heard what he was saying under his breath. He was ready to go. And those guys were cold.
Yeah.
None of them, I don't remember anybody having jackets on the sideline that were players. But I don't know. I just don't think this game mattered. I think you needed to win, and you leave.
Get out.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, like, that's it. It was that frigid. At the half, when Georgia kicked that third field goal, a lot of Kentucky fans left.
Yeah.
You can't come back in. And by the end of the third, the place had emptied out. Now, on the Kirby deal, going for it there, he's trying to say to his guys, hey, we need to get a yard. They didn't get a yard. They should be able to get a yard. So I'm not, eating my hat over this thing. I'm just saying, if you kick a field goal, you're up 3 scores. Now, there's no certainty, just like the Kentucky field goal, that you can go out there and function. Again, you got to snap it from a person who's not. Every time there was a long snap, there were not a lot of punts, but there were 2 punts total tonight.
I remember one Brett Thorson punt.
One Brett Thorson. I think Kentucky punted more than
a
that,
couple times,
but it wasn't a lot. And like you could just see the punter out there. Like I don't know why they didn't have gloves on. Gloves would be a different ball game if you were out there with gloves as
I
a
think
punter.
Aaron Murray screaming at the TV, where are your gloves?
Yeah, Aaron was not very good with gloves on, and the Liberty Bowl was not that cold. I'll tell you that.
I think Georgia's still the #1 team in the country for sure.
Clearly, right now.
Yeah.
After what we watched today,
Yeah.
nothing budged to me. So
How about that? Can we review the Texas Christian win?
Yeah.
That was insane to
That was
me.
great.
That was no. I don't know that I've seen that before. What happened there?
That kicker deserves.
The coach said they practiced that.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
They ran the ball
had
on
to.
third
It looked
down.
like
The
it.
We
clock
used to
is
practice
ticking.
half-court shots. That doesn't mean that you should make them. I mean, like,
And he drilled that bad.
he did not get to line it up, Matt. He just rolled out there. Michigan saved themselves. I didn't see how they did, Matt.
Late field goal.
But they were down.
Well, they kicked the field goal.
Which they should have done.
Yeah, to go down by 1.
With 4 to go.
Yeah, a lot of people in the press box.
No,
thought it was a
no.
bad
No.
idea.
Well, the
thought
press
it was a
box
good idea.
geniuses,
Yeah.
we need to turn the volume down, first of all. And then, like, that's the biggest thing to
But they
me.
got
But I'm
the
never
stop.
in the press box.
They got the stop, and then they were able to. They had enough time to kick a game winner. But Ohio State messed around. A lot of Tennessee was losing when we started this.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to lose.
SC UCLA is going to be and then our coast to home game is going to be the Ducks and the Utes.
Yeah. So again, like you said earlier, this is the time of the year where the regular season is coming to a close. You got your big rivalry game for most teams next week, and this is a week where you get out, you get your win. I said earlier, Georgia doesn't need style points.
No.
They can win a tough game like this by 10 against Kentucky, who lost to Vanderbilt at home. They're still going to be #1, and Kirby might not have been happy, but they're happy they got out with a win, and that's all they needed.
The Florida Gators got beat today by Vanderbilt.
Mark Stoops was kind of happy. Someone said that in his press conference. Hey, Vanderbilt beat Florida. He goes, that's the SEC.
Yeah.
It happens.
Oh, I mean,
these teams are.
Well, even
kinda
Kirby
better
said it
than
today.
anything.
He reiterated for the 50 billionth time. It's
can't-
hard to play on the road in the SEC.
It is so hard. People don't understand it, man. They think.
He said, "Look at what happened across the country today."
Yeah, he doesn't watch stuff or whatever. He doesn't read anything, and then But he never says he doesn't watch stuff. But I just I've been on the field for 20 years, and the crowd can jump on top of you real quick at Commonwealth, at Williams-Brice, anywhere. And South Carolina tonight is putting on a show. The fans, the Billy Bryce, it's alive. If the rafter, what is it? If it ain't rocking, it was something like, there's a saying at South Carolina that if the upper deck ain't swaying, they ain't playing. Because in 1984, there was like a moment there where the upper deck at South Carolina was like,
That's a great rhyme.
it is for a program that's not a great program. But tonight, if Shane wants to get them sunglasses on, you go beat Tennessee. But man, it's tough. It is tough in this league to go on the road. And, when the other team makes a play, the explosion of sound is significant.
How were the Georgia fans out there?
There were a lot of them. They were not as loud as...
They were cold.
Not as loud as they've been at other stadiums.
The cold affects everyone's. The fans. You know, were people drinking tonight? Like, why would you drink?
The Kentucky crowd was for sure.
Well, the Kentucky crowd is kind of bourbon.
That bourbon.
Yeah, the bourbon deal.
Warm inside.
So, I think this is a game that, Matt, they're going to play the Jackets next week, who are kind of goofing around with North Carolina.
That should be a bloodbath.
It will. It will be. Yeah, it's going to be tough for Georgia Tech to function. I mean, they got railroaded by Clemson, who is not great, and they've played better as the season's gone on.
A lot of bad teams.
But Georgia Tech is not in Georgia's universe.
Which means Georgia's going to the playoff because they can lose to LSU and they're still getting in. Yes. I mean, they're one blowout win against Georgia Tech from stamping their tickets.
And by the way, talking about LSU, you know, a week ago they were playing in freezing temperatures. So you wonder, hey, why did they play this bad? The weather does matter on Southern teams, and that's why when you see the Gators go up to Nashville, they almost never. There are plenty of times when they do not play well in Nashville because that game's a late game in the calendar. It's a November game. I remember '96 they had to save themselves, the national championship team. If they didn't convert a first down, Vanderbilt would have had the ball. The Gators converted a very controversial 4th and short. Vandy would have had the ball in position to kick a field goal or drive the field to win the game. But Florida iced it there. But they have, you know, that's why the Big Ten wants home playoff games because they feel like the weather is an advantage for them. And we'll just see how that goes. But I have to say tonight, you know, if Georgia is going to, in the future, not win the league and go on the road to Michigan, that's going to be a decided advantage for Michigan. Whereas them coming to Athens, of course the advantage will be for Georgia, but you throw the weather in there too. I mean, the Big Ten's been playing in this mess for a few weeks now.
Yeah, Ryan, I mean, Kirby's built a team that should probably play a little better in the cold. You know, it's not up to their quarterback to throw consistently throughout the game to win you ball games. They went in the line of scrimmage. They went in the trenches. They play good defense. They've got 3 backs that they normally rotate out there. This should be a team built to play better in the cold. I mean, the way Michigan plays is similar to Georgia's. Georgia is just more physical, and they were the tougher team last year, and it looks like they're that same team this year as well. So Ohio State plays well in the cold, but they can mess around with teams when the weather is bad. But it's not. I think Georgia would play better in the cold than a team like maybe Tennessee, who really depends on their quarterback play more than Georgia's does.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where there's not going to be another game that they play this year that's like that. No. With weather like that. Next week we'll be in Athens. It just won't be that cold. Then they're in the Bends. And then they could be in the Bends again or be out in Phoenix, which is probably not going to be that cold. I've never been there, but
no, it's going to be in the 80s.
They're not going to be in that situation again. Kentucky is more used to the cold. I was talking to a couple of the fans. They said it was colder last week during the game that they lost to Vanderbilt. They said it was worse.
Last time we covered a game in Los Angeles, it was 70 degrees on January 1st. So
well, last year, New Year's Eve, it was 70-something in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
So for the Orange Bowl, and I don't think most of these players on Georgia are used to playing in these conditions. A lot of them being from the South or out in California or Texas or whatever. So it's just one of those games where I think Dean's right. You're not really watching this one back for many reasons. The only reason they might watch some of it back, they're going to watch more of it back on the defensive side of the ball because you could play another pro-style offense again. You could end up playing a Michigan. That's what they do with Levis. They're going to watch back the defensive tape for sure, but offensively, the game plan was to come in, run this clock out, win the game. They're going to blow most of these teams out, right? They've blown out most of the games that they've won. Well, they've won all the games, but it wasn't about that, and I think people sometimes get too caught up in the box score and not what is actually happening on the field.
They want Georgia to cover.
Well,
I get it.
Don't bet your money then.
Yeah.
I mean, the spread doesn't matter unless you're actually betting. The spread literally means nothing unless you're putting money on it. So if you're out there and you care about this spread and, the dog's covered.
I think this
why do you care?
group that's watching, the hundreds of thousands of people that ingest our data each month, my wholesome advice to you would be, I would not bet on Georgia. I just would not bet on Georgia, period.
I want to say why after you say your thing.
Well, I just don't think you have... I mean, I think for us, we're too close to seeing it, to that distorts things. And I think to them, they're so passionate that they, it's just not smart.
Here's why I'd say not to bet on Georgia. They walk in there each week with a completely different game plan, and they want to control the game, and they do. They were in control of this game whether it looked like it or not, for the most part. They were in control of Oregon. They were in control of South Carolina. They were in control of every game outside of the first half of Kent State and the first half of Missouri.
Yeah.
And so what you see is the way they decide they want to play it and win, the other team is the one that ends up having to adjust because they just don't have the staff and the players. So that's why you see all these different types of win. Auburn, Oregon, South Carolina, Vanderbilt. These were all completely different wins. They were blowouts. This is a completely different win today. You saw them just run all over Auburn. You saw them just fly down the field against Oregon. You saw a complete mixture of all of it against South Carolina. This is a tough team to bet. Whether you want to bet the over-under or you want to bet the spread, because Georgia decides ahead of time what this is going to be, and you just can't always know exactly how that's going to go.
Well, after this weekend, we don't know what's going to happen with SC, Tennessee, or, out west. But they're the best team. Turnovers are an issue, of course. I think people like to talk about the defensive backs getting beat. They're going to get beat. They play man a lot, okay? And you're going to get beat sometimes.
Unless you are this, absolute top three.
Deion Sanders?
Or what's the kid from Cincinnati that's let up a couple of Sauce? If you're someone like Sauce Gardner who's just that talented and you let up nothing, there's only so many Sauce Gardners out there. Kelee Ringo is projected to go in the first round. He is probably going to be a first-round corner. He's going to get beat. All right, there's only so many Sauce Gardners. I'm not saying Kelee can't become that, but you get caught up. Kamari Lazard had one bad pass interference. Just turn around and
Kelee did not have an interception last week.
Not in state.
He's had 2 interceptions in the end zone.
Yeah, in the last 3 weeks.
In the last 3 games.
In the last 3 games,
that matters.
In the end zone.
And he had the one play against him today for 30-ish yards or whatever it was.
That was a great ball. That first drive.
Levis, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the quarterback.
He was there. It was a great ball.
I mean, look, you're going to get. To me, you're going to get beat. I mean, it's what it is. But
and you're going to get beat when you're playing SEC receivers each and every week. I mean,
let me spit this out real quick. There's math though that those guys can play that way. They don't play that all the time, but those guys play that way allows everyone else to play the way that they can play. I mean, it's okay, I mean. Everybody wants perfection. It's not going to happen.
Forget something on defense that I didn't understand. This is a really specific thing, Matt, so if you don't remember, then I get it. But there was, in the fourth quarter, when Kentucky was driving, why is Pop not on the field on 3rd and 4th down? Why is Jamon T?
What was the yardage?
It was in short. It was
like
3rd and 4th
4?
and short. Yeah, like 4 and less. And they were in Georgia territory. Was it a switch and they just couldn't get it back on or something?
When they called the timeout?
Yeah, and then they called the timeout. So
it seemed like they did rotate a good bit. They have the
Marshall was out there.
I saw Tresman Marshall, Ryan Davis was out there. Those two kind of played together.
Well, that's what they've been doing is Smile and Pop are a little bit of a tandem, and then Tresman and Ryan Davis are kind of the supplement.
And Jalen Walker was out there a good bit. Another true freshman that the staff is really, really high on that I think is going to be a starter at some point in his career. It was good to get some of those younger guys in a game like this.
Is this defensive line elite?
No, I don't. Like, it's no hate, but this it's Jalen Carter is levels above the rest of the defensive line.
he is.
I really like what Micah Williams will become.
Yeah,
I think
he looks good.
he has
man.
flashes. I mean, he does have some Trayvon Walker type qualities.
I don't think they're as good as they've been in the past, but if we're talking elite, I think they're probably still a top 5 defensive line in college football.
Yeah, in this climate.
So Jalen Carter was effective tonight, not as effective as he was the last 3 games.
Not as
I
much.
think this is probably the best offensive line of the last 3 games that they played.
Which is crazy because
They have not played that well.
No, they have not. I mean, UK is
Stoops
lost.
was really happy with the way the offensive line played.
I just
and they rushed for less than 100 yards on Georgia.
it was fewer than 100.
Yeah, it was 89. So
That's saying something. I mean,
To me,
they dominated
I
that
didn't
game.
feel like I noticed the safeties the way I usually notice the safeties.
By the way, that was a fumble. I mean,
it was.
Chris picked up. I mean, I don't
Javon
see how
Bullard picked it
was
up. That was a fumble.
I don't see how you don't look at that.
that was tough to see from my.
That was I was
Well,
in the
we
press
watched
box
the
at that
replay,
moment, and I'm like,
too.
why aren't you blowing the whistle just like to take a look at it? Because that also would end the game. But I don't know. I think this is I don't know, but they're the best team in the country. They're 11-0. They were probably going to punt, the Jackets to Savannah next week, and and get ready for LSU, because all that matters is what's coming up. What we just saw, you're not going to see that Stetson Bennett in the future. The guy that, Georgia is predicated on a pretty quick pass game and so forth. All right, we're going to wrap it up.
Real quick, you want to score update?
Okay.
Halftime, South Carolina is up 11, 35-24.
Oh, they scored
35
again.
points.
They scored again.
Yeah.
They're in Tennessee. Better watch it at this stage.
Arkansas is up on Ole Miss 21-3.
I'm not surprised by that.
Missouri's up 21 over New Mexico State Blind Academy.
Wow, we really
UAB
went in there on the disabilities. Okay.
That was probably wrong, but it's more of a joke than anything. Sorry, out there. LSU, UAB 0-0. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to try to make fun of any smaller schools the way I just did. So.
Oh man, I checked you. All right. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the site. Oh, look at how creepy I